Following the 2020 election, Republican states began passing bills in order to suppress voter turnout, because they lost. I mean, that's generally not how you're supposed to handle a loss, but, we're talking about Republicans here who loves voter suppression. So now, when news went out about that, there were some big companies that pretended to be outraged about this. Oh my God, I can't believe the Republicans would engage in voter suppression. Really? Have you paid attention to what was actually going on? But let me give you some examples of this. Comcast put out a statement. Here's what they said. We believe that all Americans should enjoy equitable access to secure elections, and we have long supported and promoted voter education, registration, and participation campaigns from across the country to achieve that goal. Now, they added, effects to limit or impede access to this vital constitutional right for any citizen are not consistent with our values. That's Comcast. Here's AT&T putting out a statement as well. We believe the right to vote is sacred, and we support voting laws that make it easier for more Americans to vote in free, fair, and secure elections. So now let me just add. This is an April statement from AT&T CEO John Stankey. I don't know if that's the right way to say his name, and I'm the last person to criticize somebody's name. But AT&T, you got a stanky problem, okay? You're literally funding politicians that support voter suppression. I think that's pretty stanky, all right? Moving on. Pharmaceutical company Merck also put out a statement. Here's what they said. And by the way, this was published as an ad in the New York Times. For American democracy to work for any of us, we must ensure that the right to vote is for all of us. We call upon all Americans to join us in taking a nonpartisan stand for this most basic and fundamental right of all Americans. So now, again, public statements, okay? Now, what were they doing in private? Well, it turns out, of course, they gave money to the same politicians who have been attempting to kill voter rights. Now, this is according to a report from the Brennan Center for Justice, okay? In the following months following the statement, Comcast and its political action committees had made donations to several Republican lawmakers who had authored voter suppression bills that were signed into law last year. At least 19 states enacted 33 laws that further restrict access to voting in 2021. One example is Florida Senator Dennis Baxley. On October 15th, Comcast donated $1,000 to Baxley after he sponsored a bill called SB 90. It's a 48-page bill that, among other measures, makes it a misdemeanor, a crime, to give water or anything else to people waiting in line to vote. So if you were waiting in line to vote and you're in Florida and it's hot and sweaty, and this voting group wants you to stay in line, encourage you to stay in line, because sometimes lines in minority areas especially can be 3 to 6 hours long in that sweltering Florida heat. It is a misdemeanor, a crime, to go out and encourage those people to stand in line by giving them water. Baxter's bill also eliminates 24/7 ballot drop boxes and requires such boxes to be monitored at all times and only available during in-person voting hours. It also requires voters seeking an absentee ballot to submit a driver's license and social security number, and requires voters to reapply for mail-in ballots more often, among its many other provisions that make voting more annoying and more difficult. So, that's for Merck. Merck also donated $1,000 in September to Florida's Baxley, and $1,000 in October to Texas Republican State Senator Lois Kochhorst, the primary sponsor of one of the state's 2 new voter suppression laws and a co-sponsor of another one. JP Morgan Chase also donated to a co-sponsor of Texas SB 1, giving $1,000 to its PAC, from its PAC, to Senator Dawn Buckingham in September. JP Morgan Chase CEO Jamie Dimon released a statement in March saying that as state capitals debate election laws, we believe voting must be accessible and equitable, and that we regularly encourage our employees to exercise their fundamental right to vote. And we stand against efforts that may prevent them from being able to do so. Yes. Other companies and organizations that donated to the sponsors of Brennan Center identified state voter suppression measures after publicly denouncing them earlier this year, included General Motors, and here's a surprising twist, Planned Parenthood. Now, that's not a name I thought I'd hear. Planned Parenthood. Now, I generally agree and like the things that Planned Parenthood does. The services that they protect, and acts, and make sure that they, that people have access to said services. And I think their role in guaranteeing and protecting women's, rights is a good thing. However, apparently they're also funding some bad things. So let me give you the details, right? Now, Planned Parenthood PACs had contributed to Democratic New York senators who would co-sponsor a bill that shortens the window for applying for a mail-in ballot. Again, making voting a little bit more annoying and inaccessible. So, look, that's not as bad as what a lot of the Republican states are doing, but still, we should be expanding voting, not restricting it. We should be making it easier to vote, not harder and more annoying. Now, there's more. Microsoft also donated to a Kansas Republican representative who chairs the committee that sponsors a new law limiting mail-in voting. So now this is the problem, okay? And this is why this is happening. Money in politics. Simply put, the duplicity is not an accident. No, it's by design. See, these companies will say how much they care about voting publicly because it's good PR, while supporting people who are trying to gut voting, because those same politicians who are gutting voting also vote for things that support their bottom line. Corporations, remember, they're not people. They're not the best people. They're not the greatest people. In fact, they're not people at all. They're not human beings. They're robots. They don't have a morality. Now, that said, I'm not saying that they're evil. I'm saying that they're designed to maximize profit. That's the whole purpose of a corporation. Maximize profit. They were designed that way. Okay? They were designed to steamroll over everything and in order to maximize profit for the shareholders. They have a fiduciary responsibility to maximize said profit. And so that's why you have to regulate them. That's why you have to regulate these corporations. And you have to regulate or eliminate money in politics. And regulate just means set some ground rules, right? So now, if you pay politicians, and this is why you have to have ground rules, if you pay politicians to pass laws lowering your taxes and remove rules that allow you to make more money, well, right now under the system, that's perfectly legal. But it has an obvious negative impact on democracy. Because again, those same politicians, while also helping the corporate bottom line, are also passing things that ensure that it's more difficult for people to vote, to get out and vote, to get out and actually vote for politicians that might not want to cut taxes in the rich. Might want to actually have some sensible regulation that prevents these companies from dumping toxic waste into their river. Because again, if there's something that these companies can do that ensures that they make more money, they're going to do it, even if it is bad for the area, even if it's bad for business. Which again, and let me expand on that a little bit, right? Because ultimately, in the long term, taxes, cutting taxes and deregulation does hurt business. Concentrating all the money at the top hurts all the business. Because later on, nobody's going to have money to buy for the business. And you're going to have a financial crash. You're going to have destruction, economic devastation, and human devastation. Companies can exist without people willing and able to spend money. And you have to have money to spend that money. And so you have to have companies that don't destroy, by the way, natural resources. That's another thing. Okay? If you destroy the environment, then that's not going to be good for business as well. And so if you taint the river that you're getting water from, or that your customers are getting water from, and you kill them, well, that's not going to help. And so again, that's why you have to have rules. You need to have rules. All right. So if you don't set rules, they're going to do whatever they want. And that includes bribing politicians. And what that has to do with voting rights, of course, is, again, the same politicians who are killing the right to vote are helping these corporations. And so they're going to continue funding these corporations. And that's it. Okay? So very, very simple. Very simple. So now Comcast is a great example. Comcast has a regional monopoly. Okay? So now their regional monopoly is over part of the United States. These monopolies are allowed by feckless and corrupt politicians on both sides. And they're allowed to jack up the prices much higher than in other countries for the same services. And the United States, by the way, among developed countries, actually has, again, in the case of internet service, really, really poor broadband speeds. And it's not equitable. We rank 13th in the world for internet speed. Most of the country doesn't even have access to the minimum broadband speeds. Plus, we end up paying more in this country than anyone else for less speed. And you can apply that to healthcare as well. We get less healthcare, less quality of care, less access to care, but we pay double the price. We pay more than pretty much anyone else. Prescription drugs, we pay twice as much than anyone else, than any other country. It's because we have these monopolies. And it's because we have this business. It's because we have corporations that have bought the government. And that's, again, the influence of money in politics, the result of money in politics. And so, yes, these companies were going to continue to give Congress legal campaign bribes as long as they support their financial gains, even if they also get it by killing voting rights, or even, Congress members who support literal insurrection. Doesn't matter. They're also giving money to people who supported January 6th. The point is, the lesson here is money always wins, which is why we need to get the money out of politics.